let me go, I didn't do anything! Shut up, monkey.
Imagine dedicating your entire life to justice, fighting for truth, upholding the law, making sure every citizen is treated with dignity. Now imagine being slammed against a police car, handcuffed, and called a criminal by the very people who swore to protect that same justice. But here's the twist. The man they arrested wasn't just anyone. He was the law. Before we dive in, welcome to Voices Unchained. If you believe in stories that expose injustice and celebrate truth, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment your location. We'd love to see how far these stories travel. Meet Marvin Harris. To most people, he's a name you'd read about in law journals or see on courtroom broadcasts. A federal judge known for his discipline, fairness, and fierce devotion to the law. But behind that title was a man who came from humble beginnings. Marvin grew up in a small Florida town alongside his two closest friends, Paul Thomas and Joe McKinney. They were inseparable, three boys who did everything together. They fished in the same creeks, got into the same trouble, and dreamed about the same future, to serve their country and make a difference. And they did. All three joined the military right after high school. They served side by side, brothers in arms, bound by loyalty and shared scars. But life eventually led them down different paths. Joe stayed in the service, a soldier till his final breath. Paul returned home and joined law enforcement, rising through the ranks to become chief of police. And Marvin pursued justice through the courts, becoming one of the most respected federal judges in the country. Every year since Joe's death in service, Marvin and Paul made it a tradition to visit his grave together, a promise made long ago that no matter where life took them, they'd always honor their fallen brother. This year, that visit would change everything. Meet officers Charles and Baker. Two men who wore the badge for power, not purpose. They weren't protectors. They were predators of authority, using their positions to intimidate, profile, and harass. In their eyes, skin color determined guilt long before any law did. So when they saw a tall black man in a casual clothes walking confidently through their quiet suburban neighborhood, they didn't see Marvin Harris. They saw a target. And in that moment, their ignorance wrote the first line of their downfall. The Florida sun beat down as Marvin stepped out of his cab near Paul's house, suitcase in hand, taking a deep breath of the warm air. It was peaceful, the kind of quiet that made him nostalgic for childhood days with Paul and Joe. But that peace didn't last long. A police truck rolled up beside him, slowing to a crawl. "Hey," a voice called out, "don't recognize you from around here." Marvin turned. Two uniformed officers stared him down. Baker, the one who spoke, and Charles, the driver. "Yeah," Marvin replied evenly. "I'm not from here. Came to see a friend." Charles leaned out, squinting. "What friend?" "Paul," Marvin said. "And what does this Paul do?" Baker asked, his tone sharp. Marvin's patience began to thin. He'd been down this road before, not literally, but socially. He could feel what this was. Not protocol, not concern, but prejudice. "I've told you what I'm doing here," he said firmly. "I came to see a friend. That's it." Charles smirked. "If you're innocent, you shouldn't mind a few questions, right?" "Innocent?" Marvin repeated, stunned. "I don't know what your deal is, but this conversation is over." He turned to walk away. Charles didn't like that. He grabbed Marvin's arm, twisted it hard, and slammed him against the hood of the cruiser. Marvin cried out in pain. "Hey, let me go." "Stay quiet," Baker barked, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. People peeked from their windows, but no one stepped out. Curtains moved, whispers spread, and the quiet street turned cold. Charles leaned close and muttered, "Think you're a wise guy, huh?" Then, louder, he announced, "You're under arrest for noncompliance and suspicious activity." Marvin struggled, shocked. "I haven't done anything wrong. Do you know who I am?" Baker sneered. "Save it for the books." They shoved him into the back of their vehicle and drove off. Before we continue, if this story already has your blood boiling, take a second to subscribe to Voices Unchained. Because stories like this, stories of truth, power, and justice, deserve to be heard. Now, back to the story. Inside the station, Marvin sat on a cold bench behind bars. No phone call, no explanation, just silence and humiliation. From down the hall, Charles laughed. "Man thought he was somebody." "Yeah," Baker added, "just another black crook with a smart mouth." Then, the station doors opened. In walked Chief Paul Thomas, off duty, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, just passing through on his day off, the same day he was supposed to meet Marvin to visit Joe's grave. He smiled at a few officers. Morning. Anything new today? Yeah, Chief, Baker said proudly. Caught a suspicious guy near your place, said he was looking for some friend named Paul. Paul froze. What guy? Charles chuckled. Just another slick talker. We locked him up. Paul frowned, sensing something wasn't right. Show me. They led him to the holding cell, and the moment he looked inside, his world stopped. There, bruised and handcuffed, sat his childhood friend, his brother in arms, Judge Marvin Harris. Paul's face drained of color. Marvin? Marvin looked up, his expression calm but burning with restrained fury. Took you long enough. Paul turned on his officers. What the hell did you two do? Baker stuttered. He looked suspicious. Suspicious? Paul snapped. That man is a federal judge. He's my friend and the most respected lawman in this country. The silence was deafening. Charles and Baker's arrogance vanished. Uncuff him. Now, Paul ordered. They obeyed instantly, trembling. Paul's fury echoed through the entire station. You slammed a federal judge on a car, denied him a phone call, mocked him. Neither man could look him in the eye. Congratulations, Paul said coldly. You just destroyed your careers. Within the hour, both officers were stripped of their badges, firearms, and authority. Marvin said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than any courtroom gavel. Later, Paul sat with him in his office. Marvin, I don't know how to make this right. Marvin sighed, rubbing his wrists. We'll do what we came to do first. Paul looked confused. You still want to go? Marvin nodded. Joe's waiting. And they did. Two old friends standing before the grave of the third, the one who never got to come home. Marvin placed his hand on the tombstone and whispered, We promised to always do the right thing. Some people forgot that today, but not us. After that, Marvin kept his other promise, the one to himself. He filed a federal lawsuit against both officers. Within months, Charles and Baker were convicted of wrongful arrest, assault, and civil rights violations. Their badges revoked, their reputations erased, their names now symbols of disgrace. The same system they thought they owned turned against them. Marvin never celebrated their downfall. He didn't need to. He just stood as living proof that justice, though delayed, never fails to find its way home. The friendship between Marvin, Paul, and Joe had been forged in loyalty and sacrifice, and even after death, Joe's memory reminded them what justice truly meant. Paul vowed to rebuild his department from the inside out to make sure no officer under his watch would ever abuse power again. And Marvin? He went back to the bench. Calm, dignified, still believing in the law, not because it was perfect, but because men like him made it right, because in the end, justice doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Your voice helps keep Voices Unchained alive and reminds the world that truth always wins in the end. Because remember, the person you look down on today might just be the one signing your freedom tomorrow.